better daily, where we work hard in our minds, bodies, and our spirits to become 1% better every single day. Download the app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.life to catch the video version of these podcasts. Here's your host and my dad, Alex Van Houten.
What is up, Betterment family, and welcome to Better Daily Live. I'm your host, Alex Van Houten, and today is Wildcard Wednesday, woohoo! Which means we can talk about whatever we want. So, first of all, tell me something good. What's going on good in your life this week? Oh, I'd love to hear about it. Today, I'm going to be talking about sugar. So, yesterday, in Nutrition Tips Tuesday, I talked about artificial sweeteners and their effect on the body, some of the negative effects that we're investigating and experiencing, one of those being a rise in insulin. And today, for Wildcard Wednesday, I'll be including an episode of Defining Dad Bod called Coach Al Tackles Sugar. I have in the past been known as the sugar Nazi, as my new training clients used to call me. What's up, John? Good morning, Pat. Good to see you guys. And they called me that because one of the very first things that I did is I'd have them keep a food journal and I'd have them track their grams of sugar. And we had to keep it below a certain number, and we got really, really good at recognizing sugar in our diet and whatnot. And that's really important because many of the clients who came to me because they had fat loss goals. And one of the things you need to know about fat loss is fat loss has a lot to do with our ability to regulate the hormone insulin, the ability to drop the amount of insulin that's in the bloodstream. Good morning, Janet. Good to see you. And so I spoke about that a little bit with regard to artificial sweeteners, that artificial sweeteners might not add calories to your diet, but several studies have borne out that switching from sugar to artificial sweeteners doesn't actually result in weight loss, not even over the long term, which is what you would expect, right? If you could cut out, 300 calories of sugar every day for the next 5 years, that should result in some fat loss, 3,500 calories and a pound of fat. You make all of your sugar sweetener calorie free, and now, 5 years later, the math works out that you should weigh, 30, 40 pounds less, and that would be good, right? But that's not how it works out at all. In fact, those who switched to artificial sweeteners over sugar actually gained about 2 pounds over the course of a 2-year span. And so, well, that's not good. Also, what's the mechanism, right? Because those sugar-free beverages, those artificially sweetened things, there's 0 calories from sugar, right? So what gives? It's about insulin. And that's something that I talk about in the episode that I'm going to link here in this Wildcard Wednesday video, is the effect of sugar on insulin. So yesterday I talked about the effect of artificial sweeteners on insulin, and many people reached out and said, hey, how does that compare to sugar? Should I just use sugar to sweeten things? And so sugar is a very complicated topic, and I hate to waffle here. It depends. Is sugar good for me? Yes or no? Well, it can really help you with some muscle growth goals. It can help to fuel some intense workouts, right? It can even help with some recovery pieces, but it's a very complex question, especially when it comes to whether or not you have overarching goals as far as weight loss and fat loss are concerned. And so I feel like I do a very good job in this episode of boiling down the conversation about sugar into some really helpful action items that you can implement in your life immediately, and some science, not too much science. I don't try to get too deep into the science so as not to tell you things you've already heard, 1, patronize you, 2, or bore you, 3. So I'm going to link that episode here in the comments to this video. Coach Al Tackles Sugar, and I highly encourage you that if you have fat loss goals or weight loss goals, to give it a listen. And especially if you're wrestling with cravings, sweet cravings, things that are, your brain's telling you, hey, you should get something sweet right now. Too bad we don't crave healthy stuff, right? It's like, hey, you know what you should really do? You should have some sardines and spinach right now. I've got a hankering for sardines and spinach. Said no one ever. That's just not the case. So I am excited for you to check this episode out. I'm excited to hear your feedback on it. I'm excited for you to tell me about what you're wrestling with regard to sugar in your day. Is it the total amount that you're having a hard time with? Is it finding alternatives that taste good to you that you're having a hard time with? I'll give you an example, right? So I put out a post 3 weeks ago, maybe something like that. Pat Lee says, my brain screams sugar. See if we can get it screaming something else. Leg day for you, sir. But about 3 weeks ago, I put up a post, and I said something about coffee lovers unite. Let's get rid of this terrible evil. And it was a picture of the creamer shelf at Kroger. I think it was Kroger. It was a grocery store. You could probably go to the creamer shelf in your local Walmart or even Whole Foods or whatever and see creamers galore. But what they had, all the marketing was basically like cereal and chocolate bars. It was like Milky Way flavored creamer, and it was Butterfinger flavored creamer, and it was Cinnamon Toast Crunch cereal flavored creamer. I'm not making this up. That's a real thing. Like, that exists in the world. And so, people drink this stuff in their coffee. And what's rough about that is whether it's sugar-free or not, the creamer in your coffee is raising the amount of insulin in your bloodstream. So imagine you wake up in the morning and you're in a fasted state. You didn't eat all night, right? You're in a fasted state and your body's burning fat as a fuel source very well. You're like, I would like a cup of coffee, which is a good thing. Coffee's full of antioxidants. It's full of a wonderful thing called caffeine. I think coffee is a sacred food. I don't really think that, but you'll appreciate my sense of humor someday, I hope. Anyway, coffee, good. But then we beef it up, and I say we. I'm not one of these people, and if you're one of these people, you don't have to admit it, but stop it. You beef up your wonderful sacred liquid from on high with Butterfinger flavored garbage? Like, really? So creamer in and of itself isn't that big of a deal. Heavy whipping cream is, a decent source of some powerful animal fats that your body can use to create hormones. Your body can use those to build cell membranes. And that's good stuff, right? But you don't need all that garbage in there. You don't need the natural flavors, whatever that is. You don't need the soybean oil. You don't need the stevia or the xylitol or the sucralose or the aspartame or the asulfame K potassium or the sugar. You don't need any of that stuff. And what you're doing when you add that to your coffee is you're taking this wonderful, sacred, awesome liquid that, brings life to the unconscious. Don't worry, I'm not starting a coffee cult. I just really enjoy my coffee in the morning. And you're taking your fat-burning state right there in the morning, your fasted fat-burning state where your body's using fat as a fuel source really well. You're taking something that would otherwise boost your metabolism, improve your health, deliver some great antioxidants to your system, maybe even create some good frontal lobe activation, and you're using it to spike your insulin through the morning. So you take yourself out of a fat-burning, fasted state, and you're going, here is Butterfinger-flavored pumpkin spice caramel latte creamer. And even if it's artificially sweetened, zero sugar added, you're raising your insulin level. And that's rough because your metabolism was burning fat as a fuel source, and now it's not. It was burning fat as a fuel source, and now it's not because your insulin level raised. And the same thing goes if you did sugar. If you put a couple teaspoons of sugar. That's how I learned to like coffee. I drank my coffee like Kool-Aid when I was 15. I was like, would you like some coffee with your sugar? Don't worry, I'm reformed. But that said, that wonderful thing that you have going on in the morning, it can stick around. You can keep your coffee. But how about instead of that crazy Butterfinger Cinnamon Toast Crunch wall of creamers you can choose from in the morning, how about instead we use some regular whipping cream and we sprinkle in something we enjoy. Vanilla extract would be a great, vanilla creamer. That's how you make it. Whipping cream and vanilla extract. You don't need the sugar. You don't need all that crap. Just add that. There's a little bit of lactose in heavy whipping cream. Has a kind of a sweet taste to it. It'll take a second for your taste buds to condition, but it will be wonderful and you will enjoy it. And it won't take you out of your fasted fat burning state while you enjoy your coffee, your sacred, wonderful coffee in the morning. Don't defile your coffee with garbage creamer. That's what I'm saying here. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible somewhere. It's not in the Bible. Good morning, Lisa. Good to see you. Thank you for snapping me out of my sacrilegious sense of humor. Anyway, so the morning routine of a little bit of creamer in your coffee, some vanilla extract, some cinnamon if you enjoy that. I have a client of mine who enjoys pumpkin spice. That's actually a spice. It's a seasoning. You can buy that and you can sprinkle that in your coffee on top of your heavy whipping cream, and you can enjoy a wonderful cup of coffee that's not going to do anything. It's basically insulin neutral. It's not going to mess with your fat burning state, right? And it's going to help you continue to take a break from insulin that'll improve your insulin resistance. And I talk about a lot of things in this particular episode that will help you understand how inundated with sugar our processed food products are. So like your Greek yogurts that come in a little thing, there's like 000 peach flavored or 000 I don't know, apple cinnamon flavored or whatever. That Greek yogurt is a wonderful source of complete protein. Really is. It can be an awesome source of great fats as well. 000 means 0 fat, 0 sugar, and okay. But all that processing that goes into that changes the way that thing affects our insulin system. And sugar's in a lot of things like that. Now, that's actually a sugar-free example, but ketchup would be a good example. There's something like, I want to say there's the equivalent of 2 donuts worth of sugar in 2 or 3 tablespoons. I might have the math wrong there. It might be 4 tablespoons of ketchup. Like when you put ketchup on the side of your fries, it's like fries in 2 donuts. That's how much sugar's in there. And there's all kinds of stuff like that. It's really easy to put a whole bunch of sugar into stuff. And most people don't realize it until I start picking up food labels and reading it and going, oh my gosh, why am I getting 20 grams of sugar with my 20 grams of protein? Why am I getting 30 grams of sugar by what I'm adding on top of my salad? Why, what's going on here? What's the deal? And so I go through that in this episode. I help you understand how to read sugar, how to understand it, what your limits around sugar are given by the American Heart Association as far as what's healthy and what's not healthy. And even the American Heart Association, which doesn't always have its stuff right. There's a lot of forces that play into its recommendations. They even will tell you that your sugar consumption needs to go way down. And then I have a conversation about what it means to be conditioned and athletic and how that sugar might be able to help you with that if you're smart about it, how it can help you to grow more muscle, how it can help you to recover better, and how to use sugar in a way that's not counter purposes to your goals. Like I have a client that we just talked about, what if we want to have a candy bar every now and then? Is that possible? Can we do that, or are candy bars out forever? And it's like, well, yeah, on leg day, wreck your legs and then go spike your insulin. Your body will thank you later. That would be great. But for the most part, we don't need to be drip feeding these sugary things into our life throughout the week, because what happens is we start elevating that fasting insulin, we start increasing our insulin resistance, and what follows after that is sickness and fat accumulation, and we don't want that. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Defining Dad Bod that I'm sharing here on Better Daily for Wildcard Wednesday. We're going to be talking about sugar, and I know that it'll be immediately applicable to you, and I hope that you'll share it with those in your life who you know it will benefit. If you've got somebody who's wrestling with coffee creamer in their morning, or they're bringing you treats at work that aren't very good for your health, they can hand you a donut, and you can be like, listen to this episode. I'm going to leave this donut here. You might want to come back and take it from me later. So that said, I love you guys. I think you're awesome. Keep up the good work. Stay healthy and continue working hard on your betterment journey. You're not perfect, but if you're not dead, you're not done. Guys, this has been Alex Van Houten with Better Daily. Until next time, remember, it's just 1%. You got this. What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. I don't know if you'll be doing as well after I talk to you about what we're talking about today, but nevertheless, in honor of Halloween, you and I are going to have a heart-to-heart about sugar. And I'm going to start with sharing with you some of the work that I've done before this episode on sugar. And then I'll discuss it a bit with you after. Spoiler alert. It's very possible that after listening to me today, you are not going to like me very much. And it's also possible that after listening to me today, you're going to start looking at the food in your life very differently. Before we dive into sugar, I have some fun sugar facts that you might appreciate. First, you might be interested to know that in 1822, that's almost 200 years ago, the average American ate 45 grams of sugar every 5 days. That's roughly equivalent to 1 12-ounce can of soda. Fast forward almost 200 years, and the average American consumes 765 grams of sugar every 5 days. From 45 grams of sugar every 5 days to 765 grams of sugar every 5 days. In fact, worldwide, today, people consume about 500 extra calories per day from sugar. That's roughly the amount of calories needed to gain a pound a week. The vast majority of sugar consumption actually comes from soft drinks. That's 33% of the sugar that Americans are consuming. 16.1% comes from cakes, cookies, and pies. 12.9% comes from fruit. 9.7% comes from other drinks that aren't soft drinks, things like lemonade or sweet tea. 8.6% of the sugar we consume comes from dairy desserts and milk. And then 5.8% of the sugar comes from other grains, like breads and pastas. There are about 115 names for sugar in its many forms and other types of sweeteners that are related to sugar. To avoid listing sugar as the first ingredient, many food manufacturers use a different name. Just a couple more things you might find interesting. Heinz ketchup contains 1 teaspoon of sugar in each 1 tablespoon serving, or as some people have appreciated in my meme, you could either have a donut for the same amount of sugar as 3 tablespoons of ketchup. I know which one I'm going for if I'm allotting sugar in a day. And similar, many of the people that I've worked with have found sugar in what they've thought to be unlikely places. Tonic water, marinades, crackers, bread, fat-free dressing, tomato sauce, and even Greek yogurt among the top offenders in my book. And unlike fiber, fats, and proteins, sugar actually doesn't create feelings of satiety. There's a reason you can eat countless handfuls of peanut butter M&Ms, but only so much avocado before you're done. Do I have your attention yet? Have you ever watched old cigarette commercials? A camel in a leather jacket walks around showing everyone how cool it is to smoke a certain brand of tobacco-stuffed paper. It seems outlandish now, where those products are now referred to as cancer sticks. Nevertheless, this used to be the case. It was cool to smoke. Now we know today, inhaling a smoky, nicotine-laden haze is one of the fastest and most expensive ways to shorten your own life. So, we pity those who are addicted and teach our kids not to dabble lest they get hooked. It's really a no-brainer. So now let me turn your attention to the modern-day madness that's here in the 21st century with us. There's a powdery white substance that for some people, and in some cases, is as addictive as cocaine. It's cheaper than water, and it's hiding in almost every food product with more than 4 ingredients. This substance alone has been shown in research to cause cravings and even sleep disturbances from the mild end of the spectrum to the severe end of the spectrum, and is definitely one of the major contributors to the rise of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and the obesity epidemic today. It's marketed in bright colors daily to you and your kids in store aisles, Starbucks drive-thrus, and even featured at sports events, TV commercials, and movie previews. Basically, it's everywhere. And because of the unholy union of things like taxpayer subsidies and trade agreements worldwide, it's so cheap that we're all buying it. Oh, and unlike cigarettes, it's consumed in excessive amounts by over 90% of households in our country. And it's likely that your kids eat even more than you do. So what am I talking about? The S word, sugar. Sugar's the new smoking, and it's destroying more lives than smoking ever did right under our noses. In fact, I've found such success in helping clients achieve long-lasting results that we address sugar in the very first phase of the Defining Dad Bod Life Transformation Program. And for good reason. It negatively impacts your insulin, or you can think of that as promoting your ability to collect fat, and thus affecting all of the systems in the hormone pyramid: cortisol, testosterone and estrogen, and thyroid hormones. But if that's not enough to convince you to start limiting sugar in your home, let me pile on a few more reasons you need to start counting your sugar today. First, heavily processed food. The quality of our food deeply affects how it impacts our metabolic processes. I've spoken about this at length in episode 96, Beyond Calories Part 1. But in short, quality food is real, unsalted, unsugared, and not exposed to the super high heat and chemicals of what we call heavy processing. Since there's always more sugar in heavily processed versions of foods for taste and shelf stability than the unprocessed versions, then if you work to limit the amount of sugar that you eat every day, that will leave you looking for alternatives. If you start paying attention to sugar, it'll have the wonderful side effect of reducing the amount of highly processed food you eat and increasing the quality of your food intake all by itself. If you count your sugar, your metabolism and your body will thank you later. Number 2, bacteria. Did you know that there are more cells of organisms on and inside you than there are of your own cells that make you up? It's really creepy, but it's true. It's even been postulated that those bacteria can impact body composition, sleep cycles, immune function, muscle activity, cravings, and things like anxiety, depression, and ADHD. In fact, in some studies, the type of bacterial colony that was in an animal had a bigger effect on that animal's fat accumulation, that is, how fat they got from eating the food they ate, than how much food they were actually eating. Another way to say that is, if you've got great bacteria, you don't have to worry so much about how much food you're eating. That being said, guess what grows bad bacteria more faithfully than anything else? You might have guessed it. Sugar. If you start counting your sugars, you'll foster more good bacteria. And not only might you notice an improvement in seemingly unrelated things, but your gut will be much happier too. Number 3, inflammation. When sugar enters the bloodstream in large amounts, it can damage soft tissues in the body. It can also increase cholesterol and harden arterial walls by spurring inflammation within the body. We had the opportunity recently to talk about this with Dr. Kent Sass in episode 113. In his quest to help cure metabolic disorders for good, were markers that he was working with his patients to get a handle on. If you start counting sugars to reduce inflammation over your entire body, you'll likely avoid a cascade of health issues. 4. Fat storage. Insulin is an important hormone that does a number of things in the body, but among its many duties, it does switch your body from burning fat to storing fat. When you consume a high sugar meal or snack, it causes insulin to increase in the bloodstream, and then the following metabolic changes cause the body to store fat rather than burn it. Every once in a while, this is not a big deal, but if this is happening in your body on a regular basis, and you're one of the people who are predisposed for this to become a problem over time, then it's possible you could lose the ability to burn your fat stores well. And I've seen it a lot. Take my word for it. Excessive fat storage plus insulin resistance is not a place you want to be. Start counting your sugar to burn body fat better. And not to be fatalistic, but number 5 is death. Overconsumption of sugar is thought to be so detrimental in the scientific community that the American Heart Association has weighed in. It was just a couple years ago that they set guidelines against the consumption of sugar to prevent death by heart disease. That's right, you heard me. They recommend that the average man eat no more than 37 grams of sugar per day, and the average woman no more than 25 grams of sugar per day. At these low levels of sugar consumption, you can be sure to stay at a low risk of death by heart disease. If you want to live a longer life, don't be among the average American who consumes more than 100 grams of sugar per day. Now, in this article I just shared with you, I've said a lot of things that have a lot of nuance to them, and I'd like to discuss some of those things with you. First, I want to note that the limits that I just spoke around sugar consider the average man and the average woman. If you actually look at the American Heart Association's recommendations, trained men and women, that is, those who are exercising regularly and have been for the last 6 months. Check out last week's episode 115, Stop Exercising, Start Training, to understand what that means. Those individuals offset the insulin response of sugar by creating a demand for short-chain carbohydrates that will be used quickly as energy. And that means sugar doesn't impact them nearly as negatively as those who aren't exercising regularly and who are sedentary rather than active. What I'm saying to you is, the sugar recommendations to prevent heart disease, to promote good gut bacteria, and to reduce the risk of things like type 2 diabetes, those same rules don't seem to apply to the top 2% of the population who are athletically conditioned. So if you're listening to the sound of my voice, and you've been practicing your training program for over 6 months, and you're very consistent and you're doing a great job with that, you've earned yourself a little higher of a sugar allotment, which is why you'll hear me talk on the show about enjoying French toast and carrot cake. I'm not going to stop working out anytime soon, so my allotted grams of sugar are a bit higher than most. Even then, though, the athletic man and athletic woman recommendations by the American Heart Association are still less than what the average American is consuming today. Last I checked, the athletic men got 72 grams of sugar per day, and the athletic woman 57. That's much easier to manage than the 37 and 25, but that still doesn't leave a lot of room for regular Dr. Pepper consumption or Snickers bars at the office. My advice if you're a trained individual, plan your sugar enjoyment on heavy lifting days. Leg day and back day are my favorites. Your glycogen stores will be nice and depleted from your hard work, so your sugar can go to helping to restore those, and the insulin spike can be helpful for the anabolic effect on your muscles. The other thing that's worth discussing is, quote, natural sugars. I can hear it now. What about bananas, Alex? What about strawberries? What about apples? Those are good sugars, right? Well, yes and no. Your apple, your strawberry, your blueberry, your banana, they're going to have a much higher micronutrient profile than something like your Coke, Skittles, and Twinkies. But if you're having a problem regulating your sugar well, then you're not helping yourself by adding a whole bunch of fruit to your smoothie in the morning. How do you know if you're having trouble regulating your sugar well? Well, how's your midsection doing compared to 2 years ago? If you're not having a hard time keeping your waistline in a great spot, then it's likely you're very insulin sensitive. Or a more objective way to look at that is your hemoglobin A1C as tested by your medical professional. It's a great snapshot of the last 3 months of how your body's been regulating sugar. If it's getting close to that 5.7 mark, or even higher than that, chances are your, quote, natural sugars also need to be cut down as well. For my clients, in the initial phases of training, I ask them to count all sugars the same. Some professionals would disagree with me, but it's my method. A banana counts the same as a Reese cup, which counts the same as a Sprite. After the initial shock of reducing their sugar consumption to almost negligible, then we add our fruits back in as we continue to condition ourselves. We emphasize high fiber, high antioxidant fruits, like strawberries and blueberries. And in the meantime, we learn to rely on veggies, proteins, and fats to be our go-to snack options. And then in the final phases of training, when my clients can claim being trained individuals, we have the occasional treat now and then, which means high sugar, not fruit, occasional thing, and we don't generally limit our fruit consumption. And in that way, you can find a helpful and sustainable rule around your sugar consumption, even if you're a trained individual. During periods of low volume, low intensity training, cut down on the sugar for your body composition's sake and for your liver. But during periods of high volume or high intensity training, utilizing simple carbohydrates can be an important and effective part of getting the best performance out of yourself and promoting the best body composition. And lastly, on the addictiveness of sugar. I've compared sugar to smoking and cocaine in this episode. And while evidence of sucrose, that is, table sugar itself, being highly addictive is nuanced and shoddy, one thing we can say is this, that for some people, and this seems to be something that is genetically heritable, meaning you could have got it from your mom and dad, for some people, adding sugar and fat to something lights up their brain the same way cocaine or nicotine might light up yours. It's not everyone, but some of us, and I would include myself in this category, just can't get enough of or control ourselves around things like uncooked cookie dough or grandma's apple pie with a little bit of ice cream on top. No, it's very unlikely that we're going to find that table sugar is ultra addictive like cocaine. I've never seen anybody eat endless scoops of table sugar 1 teaspoon at a time or doing lines with the white granules on work breaks. But from one fellow addict to another, if you're listening to this, I know that my willpower is very, very low when it comes to high sugar, high fat foods. And so I do 3 things to make sure that that problem does not make its way to ruining my dad bod or my legacy of health. The first thing is I don't keep that stuff around. When Kristen was breastfeeding Gabriel, she had a really hard time keeping weight on her. And so I would make a pan of brownies for her once or twice a week because she had no appetite and I was trying to encourage her just to get some calories in her system. The poor girl was wasting away to nothing. But having a pan of brownies on the oven was just too tempting for me. And she probably got 3 of the 16 brownies that I made her. And well, as you know, all the changes that happen after a new baby, my dad bod wasn't appreciating the extra fat and salt and sugar. So, in our house, we don't keep that stuff around very often. And if we do, we try to put it somewhere where you're not going to walk by and see it all the time. Out of sight, out of mind. Know yourself. And if that's you, control your environment, since you can't control your immediate moments. The second thing I do is I announce my intention so that I can create a little cognitive dissonance with myself if I start to fall off the straight and narrow path. If I'm going to have a cookie, great. But I'm going to tell my wife that I'm only going to have 1 cookie. Because if I walk into the kitchen and grab one without saying anything, then it's much easier to walk into the kitchen and grab one again without saying anything. But if I say, hey hun, I'm going to eat a cookie, I don't need to eat another one after this though. So you have my permission to punch me in the face if I get up to grab another. Now you might say it differently, but that's how we speak in my house. Yes, you can feel bad for my 4-year-old. And the number 3 thing I do to deal with being a predisposed sugar addict is I periodize my treats around my weight training program. I've mentioned my favorite treats on the show a number of times, so I'm not going to make you too hungry here. But for the purposes of health and fitness, I work hard to make sure that my phases of training line up with what I would like to enjoy. About twice a year, I'll spend some time in a foundations or deload phase. During that phase, my body's not going to make great use of simple carbohydrates in the form of sugar. So it's during those times, 2 to 4 week spans of time, that I simply swear off sugar altogether. But what about my pumpkin spice latte, Alex? Don't plan your foundations phase around pumpkin spice season if it's that big of a deal to you. And that's what I found for myself. My birthday's coming up here in December, and one of the things I really love during the holiday season and my birthday is all of the stuff that I enjoy eating. Again, I'll try not to make you too hungry here, but I've been around the sun enough times to say it's a really dumb idea to do a deload phase during the holidays and your birthday season. Instead, I plan my training to be in a hypertrophy phase during that time. That's a high volume, high intensity training phase that's going to make great use of simple carbohydrates. And so with a little intelligent planning and knowing my goals for the year, I can make sure that the times that I'm enjoying my sugar addiction are actually working with my goals rather than against them. If that sounds like a little too much planning and proactivity for you, I get it, and helping people like you is what I do for a living. It's not too late to get some holiday planning done for your program. The link to a trial's below. #earning Christmas cookies. So there you have it. Sugar is the new smoking, or at least I hope it takes that trajectory. More people today understand that smoking is bad for you and do it less and less, and I would love to see our sugar consumption do the same. There are financial issues worth considering, there are some training cycle issues obviously that we've started talking about, and maybe even some tough changes around the house that we're going to have to make in order to see this thing through. But I believe with some education, intentionality, and a reality check around what's most important to us in our life, we'll find some good balance. Until we get there, for now we can say, if you're going to eat some Halloween candy, do it on leg day. This has been Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
Thank you for joining us for your 1% Better today. Don't forget to subscribe for the podcast. Leave us a raving review to tell others how Better Daily has helped you in your journey. If you want more Better Daily, download our app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live. Use code POD to get 25% off your subscription. That's POD, all caps, to save 25% on your subscription. We all have a cross to carry. It's later when we do it together. Go to betterdaily.live today.